Are you really our child? My dad sighs as he looks at my report card. Growing up in a family of doctors, I always thought that following that path was the natural thing for me to do. So I've been studying hard since I was a child, and my grades have always been at the top of my class. But to my dad, a doctor himself, that's apparently not enough. He says it has to be at the national level, or it doesn't count. Hearing this again and again, I gradually grew to despise the profession of being a doctor. My name is Emily. Both my parents are doctors, and so are my relatives. I have an older sister, and my parents always assumed that my sister and I would naturally go into the medical field. My sister Jessica has always been exceptional and has been the favorite of our parents. Everyone thought Jessica would become a doctor, and she became one without any setbacks. I think that's impressive. But Jessica always got whatever she wanted, and she was praised, even for the smallest things. She was so indulged that I was envious. I was always being compared to Jessica, and I was always told that I wasn't good enough. Even though Jessica is 5 years older than me, the fact that I couldn't do what Jessica could do was treated like a failure on my part, when it should have been expected. Gradually, my parents stopped caring about me. When Jessica was stressed from studying, she would verbally abuse me, and sometimes she even raised her hand in anger at me. But I never told anyone, knowing that my parents wouldn't believe me. I went to a college preparatory school, but I have no intention of going to college. After constant verbal abuse, I left home. I was already working part-time, planning for this, and I had enough money to get by, for now. When I graduated from high school, I found a live-in job at a hotel in a tourist area, and they took me in. I needed my parents' consent because I was still a minor, but they wrote the consent form without a word. They probably just wanted me to leave, the failure that I was, as soon as possible. I hadn't contacted my family for over 6 months since leaving home, and I hadn't heard from them either. But as the end of the year approached, I got a call from Daddy. "Come home for the New Year's celebration. The relatives are gathering, and you'll be the host." Daddy said just that and hung up without waiting for my response. At home, it's a tradition for relatives to gather for a feast every New Year's. Since the relatives are all doctors, it's always been a painful experience for me. And of course, I always end up doing the odd jobs. I'm responsible for everything, from cleaning the day before to preparing food, drinks, baths, and futons for the relatives who stay over. Mom just gives me instructions, and Jessica, of course, ignores me altogether. I've wondered why it has to be me, but I felt guilty about not pursuing a medical career, and it was easier to go along with it. I thought I wouldn't be called because I left home, but Daddy contacted me, so I decided to go home for just one day. My hotel job was, of course, in its busy season. I couldn't take a long break. I planned to go home and leave quickly, using my job as an excuse. When I got home that day, Daddy yelled at me, "You're late! Everyone's coming soon! Why didn't you come back yesterday?" But I'm busy at work this time of year, so it was hard to take even a day off. "Stop making excuses! Hurry up and get ready!" He wouldn't listen to me at all. Sighing, I entered the house where Mom was waiting. There was no feeling of relief coming back home. I just cleaned, cooked, and prepared drinks, as Mom told me to. As the relatives gathered and the party started, I was out of the loop, as usual, but that was more comfortable for me. Complaints about the hospital or gossip about patients, it was nothing but bad-mouthing others. I even thought that becoming a doctor made everyone talk bad about someone. For me, it was not a fun space at all. But Jessica seemed to enjoy mingling, looking down on other doctors and patients, making fun of them. As I carried drinks, Christopher approached me. "So, Emily, being a doctor was impossible for you, huh?" He said with a smirk, and I felt disgusted. I wanted to say that I hadn't failed to become a doctor, I just didn't want to. I don't want to be someone who can't live without demeaning others like you. I swallowed the words that almost came out, because it would only drain my energy to say them. Night came and I fled from my family home. My parents complained about how the cleaning would be done, who would entertain tomorrow. But I didn't care. I have to work early tomorrow. Without even bringing a change of clothes, I just said that and quickly boarded the bus home. That was the only contact from my family for a year. When it came, I thought, not again. Every year, I took a day off, went home, and immediately returned. It wasn't that I didn't find it bothersome, but it was only one day a year. I lived at home until I graduated from high school, and they even paid for my college preparatory school, despite not going to college. So I figured it wouldn't hurt to show my face at home that much. 7 years have passed since then, and I'm now 25. I still visit home once a year, unchanged. It's that time of year again. I should be hearing from Daddy soon. Just as I started thinking that, the phone rang. I assumed it was Daddy, but when I looked at the screen, an unexpected name was displayed. I pressed the call button. Jessica? I hardly ever get a call from Jessica. I picked up the phone fearfully, thinking something might have happened to my parent, but contrary to my fears, Jessica was in high spirit. Hey, you know the young CEO at your workplace? He's been on TV a lot lately, hasn't he? She said with an excited voice. This attitude from Jessica was a first. I was confused and a bit scared. He has opened a few new hotels, so he has had more opportunities to be on TV. As I said that, Jessica happily replied, "Introduce me to him! I fell in love with him when I saw him on TV the other day. Plus, he's a young master, right? I think he'd suit me." I was at a loss for words. To think she'd contact me for something like this. What does she mean by suit me? Gentle Alexander and Jessica, who likes to look down on others, would never match. While I was lost for words, Jessica continued the conversation. Oh, I see. You, a lowly worker, wouldn't have a chance to be close to the CEO. Maybe you've never even met him. Even if you have, a plain woman like you wouldn't stay in his memory. Even though I didn't respond, Jessica kept talking, satisfying herself. I tried to interrupt, but Jessica's momentum was unstoppable. That's right. Do you know when the CEO will come to your place? I'll stay over that day. If I can meet him face to face, he's mine. He won't resist a beauty like me. So make a reservation and let me know. Of course, since I'm going out of my way to stay over, you'll have to cover the lodging costs. I was speechless. But Jessica, aren't you having arranged meetings for marriage? In our family, it's customary to be married by 30, and many go through arranged meetings. I thought Jessica had done that already. But what does this mean? Arranged meetings? There's no one decent. The other day, it was a 35-year-old guy. Introduced me to someone who matches me. I was disheartened by hearing that. So Jessica looks down on even her arranged meeting partners. That doesn't mean I have to introduce her to Alexander. I told her it was impossible, and hung up the phone. A month later, on New Year's Day, I went back home for just one day. I planned to entertain my relatives as usual, and then leave quickly. But this year, my relatives were unusually intrusive. You work at a hotel, don't you, Emily? I can't believe you can keep up such a low-end job, Christopher said, followed by Mom saying, Indeed, we're impressed you can do a job that's not as essential as ours. Even Daddy chimed in. I'm glad you left the house early. Now I don't have to hear from the neighbors about what you're doing. I'm sorry I'm such an embarrassment. I knew they felt that way, but hearing it all at once was indeed sad. As I was disheartened, Jessica said, laughing, You don't have any redeeming qualities, so you'll be alone forever, right? What will you do? Her words made my sadness disappear. I wanted to give it right back to her. I had finally released the emotions I'd been holding back against Jessica. Jessica, you're 30, aren't you? You're 5 years older than me. What are you going to do? If you keep having such high expectations, you'll be left behind. I blurted out those words, and Daddy was furious. How dare you say that about Jessica? Apologize, now! My parents were always on Jessica's side. Jessica was their only darling. If that's the case, I wish they would live as a family of 3, forever. I sighed, ignoring Daddy's rage. That seemed to make Daddy even angrier. What's with that attitude? Who do you think raised you this far? Mom was nodding beside Daddy. The relatives were the same. It was the consensus of all the relatives. I felt completely fed up with that thought. But before I could open my mouth, Daddy yelled, You, a failure like you, are ashamed of our family. Get out, now! The expression on his face was clearly mocking me. I took a deep breath and opened my mouth. I won't be coming here anymore after this year. I said that, picked up my belongings, and headed for the entrance. Thank you for everything, up to now. Then I heard the sound of a car outside. When I opened the door with my shoes on, a luxury car was parked there. My parents and Jessica had noticed the car's sound and came out. A man was getting out of the driver's seat. Jessica was the first to recognize the person. You, president? It was Alexander, the president of my company, the person Jessica had asked me to introduce before. Alexander bowed and began to walk toward the entrance. Jessica said excitedly, "Emily, could it be that you—" It seemed like she wanted to say, "Are you going to introduce him?" I laughed. "Sorry to keep you waiting, I was just leaving," I said to Alexander, and he also smiled. "Thought it was about time, so I came to pick you up." Our conversation left my parents and Jessica in a state of shock. Behind them, I could see the faces of the relatives who had come out to see what was happening. Daddy was staring at Alexander, dumbfounded. Alexander walked up to Daddy. I apologized for my late greeting. Following that, I leaned close to Alexander and said, "He's my fiancé. We're getting married next month." Huh? Was that Jessica's voice, my parents' voice, or both? I said with a laugh. "But I have no intention of inviting you to the wedding. I have no lingering attachment to this house, so I don't think I'll be coming back. It seems this wasn't the place for me to return to, after all." After Alexander proposed to me, he said he wanted to greet my parents. So I explained my situation up until now. Everyone noticed the problem in my family due to my reluctance to go home, and they understood once they heard about the bad reputation of the hospital. Jessica had spoken about it too, so Alexander decided to come and pick me up. Ignoring my stunned family, I continued. "Speaking of which, there's a new hotel opening near Daddy's hospital. I'm involved in the project, and when I was doing the local research, I found out that Daddy's place has been involved in multiple medical malpractice and scandals. Is that right?" Daddy's face changed color at this. "You're not involved in this, are you, Daddy?" The local people were so shocked by the bad reputation. "Jessica works there too. Are you sure it's okay?" According to the locals, the reputation of Daddy and Jessica is the worst. I was shocked to hear from the locals, like father, like daughter, referring to Daddy and Jessica. At that time, I also heard that Daddy and Jessica were causing scandals, and I felt somewhat responsible for it. That's why I'm excited to make the hotel business a success and please the locals. In contrast, Daddy and Jessica looked pale. Since I had told my fiancé Alexander everything, he simply opened the passenger door without any unnecessary interruption. I met Alexander right after leaving home. Under the previous president's policy, Alexander, the next president, was working in the field, and we became close friends. I heard later that he fell in love with me at first sight. Unlike before, where I was constantly denied, the more I worked hard, the more I was appreciated. I worked hard because I enjoyed it. He seemed to like that attitude too. Alexander took over as president after the previous one fell ill and proposed to me about 6 months ago. His words asking for my support resonated with me. Since accepting the proposal, I've been learning various things, focusing on business studies. I realized that I don't hate studying, but rather enjoy gaining various knowledge. What I hated was studying only to become a doctor. When I find something fun, I tend to look into it, and the more knowledge I gain, the more I want to do. As I was about to get into the car, Daddy yelled, "Hey, Emily, what's going on?" But I smiled and said, "I'm no longer a daughter of this house. Goodbye." Leaving my confused family behind, the car quietly drove off. Later, the new hotel opened successfully, and I was busy working on site from the first day when it was fully booked. Then my parents and Jessica came. Daddy, who spotted me, called out, "We came to see what kind of work you're doing, and to stay over. Prepare the room, quickly." I wanted to ask what nerve he had, but I was too busy managing the site. Seeing this, Alexander rushed over to send my family away, but they stubbornly caused a commotion in the lobby. Since I wasn't getting anywhere, I had the security guard step in. Then a woman named Olivia, who came into the lobby afterward, exclaimed, "Oh, it's you, the teacher." I later heard that she's a nurse at Daddy's hospital, and she doesn't think highly of Daddy and Jessica due to their arrogant attitude. Seeing Daddy being escorted by the security guard, she seemingly found it amusing and shared it as a funny story at work. Olivia, it turns out, is a neighbor and friend to the front desk staff, and one of them told me about it. Naturally, the rumor spread throughout the hospital, causing Daddy and Jessica some embarrassment. As for Mom, she used to work at the same hospital but has since retired. However, her retirement was in name only, as the truth was she was forced to quit due to a scandal. I accidentally heard Olivia slip this information. I had another job to attend to and was at a different hotel when my parents and Jessica came to the hotel again. Frustrated at their audacity, I had no hesitation in calling the police, and they were taken away for obstruction of business. Because of Daddy and Jessica's past behavior, the rumor quickly spread in the hospital. The hospital, already struggling financially, was apparently forced to shut down. Passing by my family's home a little while later, I saw it was vacant. They must have sold it out of financial desperation. I also heard rumors that Jessica's attempts at matchmaking had failed, so maybe various local gossip forced them to leave. I've changed my cell number, so they can't contact me, and of course, I have no intention of contacting them either. With the opening of the new hotel settled, I'm looking forward to my wedding next month. With wonderful Alexander by my side, both my work and personal life are looking brighter than ever.
I can't enjoy a family trip with strangers around. That's why you should stay at home. I could hear my mother-in-law's triumphant voice over the phone. My in-laws, my husband, and I were supposed to go on a trip together, but I was left behind. My mother-in-law, who dotes on my husband, has been making snide remarks to me almost every day since we got married. I should stay home. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? My mother-in-law laughed mockingly at my words. A problem? How pitiful. Well, think of it as punishment for not listening to me well. Then the phone abruptly cut off. It's not me who's in trouble. It's you guys. My name is Heather. I am a 34-year-old part-time housewife. I usually take care of the housework and work part-time at a cafe in the neighborhood. I have been married to Bill for 6 years. My husband was a colleague at the company where I used to work, although we worked on different floors. We talked a lot before we started dating because we often saw each other in the hallway. The turning point in our relationship was at the company's Christmas party. I happened to sit next to Bill that day, and we had a great time drinking and talking like we always did. Bill went to the restroom for a while, and I listened to a group of people nearby who were having fun talking. Then, a drunken manager from another department came over and started bothering me. Drink more. Come on. You're young. I was confused about how to respond to the manager, who I didn't have much interaction with. Just then, Bill, who was in the restroom, returned. Bill looked at me and the manager alternately, then gulped down the drink manager had given me and said, Chief, it seems like the table over there is having a good time. Why don't we go there together? He took the manager away from me and led him to the other table. This was the start of my realization that I was attracted to Bill. After dating several times, I confessed my feelings to him, and we officially started dating. 6 years ago, we got married, and although we don't have any children, our relationship is good. However, there is one thing that I am worried about, which is my mother-in-law, whom we are currently living with. After we got married, Bill and I lived in a small house together, but the next door caught fire, and our room was also flooded. We had to evacuate somewhere else while waiting for the recovery process to finish, but we didn't know where to go. Then, Bill's mother offered us to live with them, and we gratefully accepted. The problem is that after we started living together, my mother-in-law's comments became increasingly sharp. Even though I knew that she dotes on Bill and had made some snide remarks before, living with her made it more difficult. For example, one day when I had finished doing all the housework and was drinking coffee in the living room, my mother-in-law came home and started running around the house, saying this to me. Housework is a way to show gratitude to the husband who brings in income. You are really unfit to be a daughter-in-law if you can't even do this much. I don't know how to react to my mother-in-law's scolding, so I remained silent. If you can't do what you are supposed to do, then leave. There she goes again. This is her catchphrase. In the end, it was my mother-in-law who allowed us to live together because she wanted to live with Bill again. For my mother-in-law, my existence as a wife is nothing but a hindrance. Mom, don't blame Heather too much. Well, what Mom's saying makes sense. In a way, it's no good to neglect housework just because you were working part-time. Right, Heather? It's not a bad thing to cherish one's own mother, but I wish my husband would defend me a little more. I never intend to neglect housework. Even though I work 5 days a week for a short time, I never neglect the housework for 4 people. I do the same even when I'm not feeling well. On the other hand, my mother-in-law, despite being a housemaker, is playing around every day. I've never seen my mother-in-law do housework since we started living together. But since I'm living under her roof, I can't complain to her face. In this unfamiliar environment, I was just enduring it. Then one day, Bill suggested that we go on a trip. Just the 2 of us, which was unusual. Do you want to go to a hot spring? How about next month? Now that the busy season is over, I have to take some paid time off. I thought if I'm taking it, I might as well spend it somewhere relaxing. A hot spring? Sounds good. I haven't put in my shift request for next month yet, so I can take time off whenever. After discussing it as a couple, we decided to take a 3-night hot spring trip in the middle of next month. I couldn't contain my excitement and started researching the destination whenever I had free time. But just as we were about to make reservations, my mother-in-law started saying something outrageous. Heather, I hear you're going on a trip with Bill alone. Why didn't you tell me? I was speechless at my mother-in-law's sudden inquiry. Of course, if she found out, she might insist on going with us, so I kept it to myself. But without saying anything, my mother-in-law let out an exaggerated sigh and then said what I expected. Next month happened to be our wedding anniversary, so we want to take family trip to celebrate. Yes, we should stay in a luxurious pension. Naturally, I had no intention of going on a trip with my mother-in-law. But this time, we were planning to go with just the 2 of us. So, well, maybe next time we can all go together. It was the most compromising response I could come up with. But my mother-in-law wouldn't back down. Next time won't mean anything. We're celebrating our wedding anniversary. Can't you see? Well, if that's the case, why don't you just go with your husband? Just as those words were about to come out my mouth, Bill returned home from work. Welcome home, honey. We're just talking about the trip with Heather. Oh, I'm so excited. My mother-in-law was full of enthusiasm and started talking to my husband. And Bill was agreeing with her as if it were obvious. I wonder if Bill might have said something to his mother behind my back. Well, if Mom is looking forward to it, why don't we go together? All 4 of us. Shall we put off our plan this time? Okay, Heather? Then, as if always invisible, my quiet father-in-law joined and said, Oh, a trip? That sounds great. I had already become unable to refuse the situation of me and Bill going on a trip alone. All right then, next time we'll go just the two of us. Although reluctantly agreeing, Bill showed a relieved expression. I was not quite satisfied, but there was nothing I could do about it. I thought I would at least try to push for places to visit and local food that I wanted to eat. My lazy mother-in-law had no objections to me deciding on all the hotel reservations and sightseeing schedules. And the day of the trip arrived. We had finished all our packings, so we planned to have breakfast before leaving the house. When the alarm clock went off and stretched out my body in place. Bill? I noticed that my husband, who should be sleeping next to me, was missing. I thought maybe he had already gotten up and started getting ready, so I headed to the living room for the time being. However, there was no sign of Bill in the living room. Furthermore, his parents were also missing from the bathroom, kitchen, and entrance. No way! I had a bad feeling and called Bill's cell phone, but the phone didn't connect. Next, I called my mother-in-law's cell phone, and she immediately answered. Oh, Heather, what's wrong? Bill is driving now, so he can't answer the phone. Driving? Where are you guys now? When I asked, my mother-in-law answered with a carefree tone. Where are we? You were saying? We're on a family trip, of course. We can't enjoy a family trip with strangers, so you should stay at home. I could hear my mother-in-law's triumphant voice over the phone. I should stay at home? That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? I said, and my mother-in-law laughed mockingly at me. A problem? How pitiful. Well, think of it as punishment for not listening to me well. After saying that, my mother-in-law hung up the phone forcefully. I covered my face with both hands, and my shoulders shook, not with sobbing, but with a big laugh. Just enjoy yourself, dear. You will soon regret leaving me behind. I immediately opened the hotel reservation site and booked a luxurious hotel in the tourist spot we were supposed to visit today. I also made a reservation at a restaurant where I could have a delicious meal. It was a reservation just for one person, for me. All right, let's enjoy myself. I got ready and took my luggage onto the cab. Since I had researched various tourist spots, I wanted to visit them. It was a small tourist spot, so I might run into them, but I didn't care. I decided to forget about them and enjoy myself to the fullest. I entered a small souvenir shop that caught my eye, went into a fashionable cafe, chatted with the locals, and enjoyed my trip. As the day drew to a close, it was time for check-in. The hotel I had booked was the most luxurious hotel in the area. As I passed through the hotel's automatic doors and headed towards the check-in counter, I heard a woman's loud voice. Why can't we stay? I told you I pay if it's about money. As I looked closely, it was my mother-in-law who was causing a commotion. The hotel I had made a reservation for them was not this one. As I kept my distance and watched the situation, my husband noticed me. Hey, Heather, what's going on? You made a reservation for a pension, but we couldn't stay there, so we came to this hotel. And now we can't stay here either? As he said that, he started to get closer and closer to me. My mother-in-law also approached, her face turning red with anger. Yes, that's right. The pension wouldn't give you the keys unless the person who made a reservation was there. It's a security measure. That's why I told you. It will be a problem, didn't I? Finally, they seemed to realize how foolish their actions had been. My mother-in-law and husband exchanged glances. Their faces deflated. Just as they were about to cause more of a scene, several hotel employees rushed over to us. They quickly ushered my in-laws and husband outside, where they looked quite ridiculous. How dare you, Heather? We will stay at an even more luxurious hotel than this one. I felt somewhat refreshed and checked in with a smile. The beautiful interior and luxurious decor made me feel like I was in a dream. As I sat on a sofa in the lobby, I heard a group of women next to me, giggling and talking about something that caught my attention. Hey, do you know about that hotel near the museum? There is a really bad rumor going around. Apparently, in the rooms on the second floor, people hear hallucinations and have all their belongings stolen. What? Is that true? That's not all. Apparently, someone even murdered there. And they still don't know who did it. We're lucky we're staying here, aren't we? Creepy. But if something like that really happened, wouldn't you call the police? Well, the hotel staff might be in on it too, they said. It was a rather ominous story, and I suddenly realized that the dinner reservation time was approaching. I quickly got up and headed to the restaurant. The dinner at the high-end hotel was even better than I had imagined. After dinner, I enjoyed a bath in the jacuzzi and was about to change into a nightgown and watch TV when suddenly my cell phone rang. Hello, Heather? We found a gorgeous hotel. It's very comfortable. It's too bad that you couldn't stay here. My mother-in-law sounded like she's in a good mood. Oh, is it so? You were lucky to find a hotel you can just go and stay at like that. Right? There is hardly any other guest here except for us. So it's quiet and easy to spend time. It's really lucky to find such a beautiful hotel, so close to the tourist attractions, isn't it? With her words, something came to my mind. Excuse me, but is it a hotel near the museum? Yeah. But what about it? I knew it. I remembered the story about the creepy hotel that I heard in the lobby before going to dinner. I think it's better to run away from that hotel, you know. However, my mother-in-law laughed at what I said and dismissed it with a snort. Are you jealous of us staying in a nice place, Heather? Just be jealous then. See you later. Once again, my mother-in-law hung up the phone unilaterally. After that, I turned off my cell phone and spent the leisurely time. Then the next day, after checking out of the hotel, I visited the tourist spot I couldn't go the day before. After having fun all day on the third day, I arrived home around sunset. And it seemed that the other three had already returned home as I could see the light leaking out of the window. Hey, I'm back. As I opened the living room door, all three of them started making noise. My mother-in-law began talking about the incident that occurred at the hotel. She said that someone had entered the room during the night, and it was so scary that she quietly hid in bed. When she woke up the next morning, her wallet, phone, and all of her other belongings that were on the desk had disappeared. The three of them were in trouble and had to use the change that Bill had to call relatives who lived nearby for help. Fortunately, the relatives came quickly and paid for the hotel bill, allowing them to return home safely. Now, they are planning to go to the police station to file a report, and their anger is directed at me. Yes, directly or indirectly. You are also responsible for this incident, Heather. Even if you say that, if you had not left me alone and went on a trip, this would not have happened in the first place, right? When I honestly conveyed my thoughts, my husband raised his voice. Shut up! Don't talk back to me like that. I can't deal with you anymore. I'm divorcing you. I was stunned and couldn't say anything. But soon, I went silently to our bedroom, took something out of my cabinet, and showed it to him and his mother when I returned to the living room. Fine. I don't need a husband who won't protect his wife from being bullied. Bill's face turned pale. I had taken out divorce papers that I had prepared just in case this day would come. Did he not think I would agree to it? He looked totally shocked that I agreed to the divorce. Then my mother-in-law took advantage of the situation and started pushing for a divorce to him. Get rid of this terrible wife and find someone new. I'll help you. Okay, sweetheart? Bill couldn't go against his mother and eventually took the divorce papers. Well done. Goodbye. Live happily with your precious family. Ignoring Bill, who had collapsed on the spot, I left the house. Afterward, we both filed for divorce, and it was finalized in a few months. Bill begged for reconciliation multiple times, but I ignored him every time. From now on, I'll protect you, Heather. So come back to me. He may have said that, but it was already too late, and I no longer had any feelings for my ex-husband, so I wasn't swayed. On the other hand, it seemed like my ex-mother-in-law was happy to have gotten rid of me for a while. However, that happiness didn't last long. The news of our divorce spread around the neighborhood. Gossip-hungry people began investigating the cause and found out about my ex-mother-in-law's bullying towards me. With her already haughty attitude, this incident caused even more people to look down on her. Since she had left all the housework to me, their house was now a mess. I had no interest in my ex-husband or ex-in-laws. However, since I went through a painful experience, I hoped that they would somehow rebuild their lives and live honestly. As for me, I was able to return to my hometown and found a job through a friend's introduction. At this point, I truly feel done with marriage. But who knows what the future holds? Either way, I plan on enjoying being single for a while.